What's happening, guys? Today I'm going to talk about if refeeds in a building phase can make sense. So one of the things we talk about quite frequently is the value of refeeds in a cutting phase. You know, you can bring up your calories for a little bit, bring up your carbs, increase glycogen stores, feel a little bit better, have that mental boost or pick me up to have something to look forward to. So there's a lot of benefits that happen from a refeed when you're in a cutting phase. But what about doing them in a building phase? Would it make sense if you're bulking and you have an extra high day? Is there any value in that? So the answer is, it depends. But, you know, really, honestly, there isn't really much benefit. There isn't any benefit really physiologically from having a refeed on a building phase because your every day is a refeed. Like you don't have anything to refeed. Like when I think about the term refeed, the way I look at it is you're basically refeeding your glycogen stores. Well, your glycogen stores are already full. If your calories are nice and high and you're in the building phase and you've got plenty of carbs, you're basically running on full all the time. So there's no need to like refill glycogen. So it's not really a refeed per se, but that doesn't mean that you can't necessarily have one day of higher calories. In fact, I occasionally will have a client who will just say, hey, listen, Colin, I'm a foodie. I just love to eat. I love having one day where I can just kind of like pig out and really have fun. I've got a client who's been working with me for over a couple of years now. We've gone through a couple different cycles of reversing and cutting, and when she gets into her higher calories, she still likes to keep that higher calorie day in. You know, normally what I'll do is once calories get high, we take away the refeed and we just kind of keep it all the same. And like there's really no benefit of having the higher day. But when she was like, hey, can I just have a higher day? I just really like to have one day where I can just eat a lot of food. So I took 50 calories away 6 days a week, gave those extra 300 calories to the higher day. So now she basically she still has the high-low days, call it a refeed or call it a high day, whatever you want to call it. She still has that day of extra calories where she can just go out and have a little bit of fun. But at the end of the week, your calorie balance is still the same, and that's really what it's all about. You know, as long as we're matching all the different you know, especially calories and protein, that's the biggest thing, because once your calories get higher, we don't really have to pay too close attention to carb and fat breakdowns and making sure that everything is spot on there. We just need to make sure we're hitting our calories, hitting our protein, and for the most part things are going to be good. So it really just comes down to like, hey, if you really want a high day, if you want a day where you can go out and eat a lot of food, yeah, I mean, that's fine. As long as you're equating calories for the week on average, it's going to work out pretty much the same. I mean, I do believe that I mean, if we wanted to really get down to the last like 1%, is there benefit of keeping them exactly the same versus having one higher day? Probably. I have no data to support this. It's just my general thinking, just because I just know that the body just really seems to crave and love consistency. So the more close we can keep our calories on a day-to-day basis, I think the better the body responds to that. But that doesn't mean having this little bit of a shift is really going to make any type of significant difference. It's probably not going to make a difference at all. Really, as long as you're equating those averages for the week, that's really what it's all about. So I don't typically recommend it. I find that most people, once calories get higher, you know, it would actually become a challenge at that point. Like you're going to be full. You're going to get to a point where you're not necessarily going to want to eat a lot of food. And if you try to have a day with extra calories when you're already full, that's just probably not going to go very well. So most people, that's not necessarily the best option. Although if you have gone through a long cutting phase and you're coming out now and you've been reversing for a while, as we've talked about in some of the previous reverse diet videos, it takes a long time for hormones to catch up. So even though calories are high, you may still find yourself pretty hungry. And hey, maybe you'll enjoy that extra day. So like I said, I don't typically recommend it, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. There's nothing bad about it. It just doesn't make any sense from a physiological perspective. But if psychologically it helps you and you enjoy it, by all means, go for it. So hope that helped. Any questions, please let me know, and I will talk to you later.
I'm addicted to the love that you're giving. Every minute, every day I've been craving.